Folks, the Golden State Warriors are likely going to make a trade. That is some exciting news because the Warriors typically are not proactive. They don't take action mid-season, but when the moment calls for it, folks, and when you have a buyer's market, you seize that opportunity. You take advantage. And according to Shams Charania, all indications are the Warriors are going to take some action. We don't know for sure if they will, but it's a buyer's market. Very important to make that aware for folks, because there are a lot of seasons where the trade market's dead. There's a lot of seasons where teams with assets have massive leverage. Not the case this year. You can thank Cooper Flagg for that. I'll explain why, and let's explore some deals, baby. It's the Golden Days. Come join the party. Yeah.
They always find something to nitpick, and that's because there's expectations for us to win. It was a pretty crazy night.
Woo! Let's go. In a minute, I'ma need a sentimental man or woman to pump me up. Come on and break me off. 'Cause I get what I want and I like what I see.
Hell yeah. Love action like that. It's crazy. Welcome to the Golden Days. I am your host for the evening, Cyrus Saatsaz. You can follow me on Threads and Instagram at DogWild. I'm over on Twitter at Surf Journalist. The program is on all social media platforms at Golden Days Pod, except Blue Sky, where it's just Golden Days. Today's episode brought to you by BetOnline. They continue to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC, and so much more. Head to BetOnline today, and don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE. That's the name of the network that we're on, BLEAV. Again, it's spelled uniquely. BLEAV is the spelling of Believe. Use that promo code for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. And again, welcome everybody. Chef A, thank you for the love. Encouraging people to hit the like button. Thank you very much for that. Hit the subscribe button. Just do whatever you want to do. But if you want to help the program, obviously that stuff helps. And thank you very much. George Mack in the chat right off the bat saying the biggest mistake the Warriors could do is trading for Jimmy Butler. I will say this. If they give up the farm for him, yes. If they get him on the cheap, no. And we'll get into all that and so much more in just the detail. Julian, Leka in the chat saying the deal proposed by Bobby Sparks, I think he meant Bobby Marks, that's okay, is actually good for the team. Jimmy Butler for Wiggins, Melton, and Pods. I agree. If that is the deal, sign me up yesterday, please. The Warriors are a legitimate contender if they pull pull the lever and approve that trade, metaphorically speaking. The reason why we're talking trades, besides the fact that the Warriors need one, they do need to improve this roster. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But the main reason is because Shams Charania came out with an article today, published on ESPN Plus. He also made an appearance on the ESPN program NBA today. Sorry for the redundancy there. And discussed a lot of trade speculation out there, and two of the clips, two of the paragraphs or sub chapters of the content, whatever you want to label and call it, within the story, on two different team topics, the Warriors came up. They came up with the Brooklyn Nets, where Shams Charania is reporting that the Warriors have reached out to the Nets and communicated interest in three players, Dorian Finney-Smith, Dennis Schroder, and Cam Johnson. And then in another part of the story, where the topic shifted to the Miami Heat, and more specifically Jimmy Butler, Jimmy Butler's camp has reportedly told the Heat that he's interested in joining 3 teams. Those 3 teams are the 2 of the 3 Dallas teams, referring to the Houston Rockets, referring to the Dallas Mavericks. And then the 3rd team, interestingly enough, that he mentioned were the Golden State Warriors. Jimmy Butler wants to go to Miami. Now, we don't know if the interest is mutual. We have no idea if the Warriors are interested in Jimmy Butler. But for today's show, I wanted to explore, I wanted to talk about those trades. And then I also wanted to propose a couple of my own that I think would literally catapult the Golden State Warriors to championship contention. The good news is, with all this chatter going on, it does seem likely that the Warriors will take action. And again, not the norm for the Warriors when it comes to mid-season trades. They don't typically like to shake things up mid-season. Like one of the notable exceptions was 2020 when the team traded D'Angelo Russell to get Andrew Wiggins, but that was in the middle of a rebuild. That was in the middle of a lost season. And the acquisition of D'Angelo Russell was strictly as a trade asset, as a piece to move to eventually get the player they wanted. And again, the Warriors wildly won that deal because what they ended up with was not just Andrew Wiggins, but also Jonathan Kuminga. So, and right now, the Warriors are in a position where it's not like this every year. This is the huge benefit of a player like Cooper Flag, because when you don't have a wildly top-heavy draft like next year's draft is expected to be, there are a lot of names besides Cooper Flag that are intriguing a lot of teams. So it's not like if you don't get Cooper, it's just a waste to be a lottery team. There are a lot of prospects, and we could save those names for another show. They're irrelevant for today. But the relevancy comes into the fact that you have a multitude of teams who are willing to give up assets as part of a rebuild. You don't get that every year. This season is a buyer's market. That's why DeAnthony Melton's expiring deal by itself carries a ton of weight. That is why an expiring contract attached to Gary Payton II and Kevon Looney carries a lot of weight. The fact that the Warriors have draft picks, vitally important. Those are key assets you can move. So when we're talking about the landscape of the NBA, there are quite a few teams who just want to shed contracts, who just want to get assets in terms of the future. When I say assets, I mean either young players or draft picks. And if there's ever a time to strike while the iron's hot, this is it. Because teams, again, in most cases, are not willing to just throw assets away. Like the Brooklyn Nets, for example, they're like having a pretty damn good season this year, relatively speaking. The Nets right now are 8th in the Eastern Conference. They're 10-14, but this was supposed to be a rebuild year. This was supposed to be a season where you get a lot of empty stats from a player like Cam Thompson. You get players like Dennis Schroder and Ben Simmons getting minutes, not to win games, to lose games, so you have the best possible draft pick in next year's draft, so you can hopefully get a player like Cooper Flag. And it's not just Brooklyn that wants that prime a draft position. The Toronto Raptors, the Chicago Bulls. I don't think the Miami Heat are in that position. They're a different story. But the point is that if you're going to pursue key pieces to elevate your squad for being a possible championship contender, to being a team that has legitimate aspirations and is going to be very much in the conversation with the league's elite teams, the time is now. This is the moment. And it starts with that DeAnthony Melton. And again, Chip Pickard, again, I mentioned that already. Thank you for repeating what I said, that yes, the draft is deeper than just Cooper Kupp. And as I already said, we can cover those names on another show. That's not what today's program is about. The point is, this is about what the Warriors can get in a season where there are quite a few assets you can grab, and you're losing practically nothing in the process. It's incredible. This is, again, literally a buyer's market for the Golden State Warriors. Palmetto Money, by the way, showing some love. I'll give you love right back for that. Palmetto Love adding that he wants Miles Turner, or maybe she, I apologize, that you want your wish list, if you will, includes Miles Turner. Now, Miles Turner is a tricky one, and his name's not going to come up today for the simple reason that, again, this is a buyer's market. So it doesn't make much sense to pursue players that you're going to have to give up a lot for when there's a lot of individuals out there who you don't have to give up anything for outside of just salaries to match. So Miles Turner, the Pacers would want a lot back from him. Dennis Schroder, different story. Vucic, I think you're referring to Vucevic of the Chicago Bulls. You can give up practically nothing for a player like him because the Bulls are also in a rebuild. Jeremy Grant of the Trailblazers, another great example. You don't have to give up much. The biggest downside with Jeremy Grant is he makes a lot of money. The more money the other player makes, the more you have to give up to match those salaries. Cam Johnson of the Brooklyn Nets, again, that is a real option because Shams is reporting that the Warriors have listed him as one of the 3 players on Brooklyn that they actually want. We have 3 names officially on record now in terms of players that we know the Warriors are actually interested in. We rarely get that type of information. So kudos to Shams Charania again of ESPN for dropping that nugget. That's very valuable information we're talking about here. So Drew in the chat saying, unless it's a trade for the future, why? Because the Warriors are currently 14-9, because the Warriors had a red hot start to the season that was not a mirage, that was not a fluke. This team is close. If you don't believe that, we're just on a separate page. And again, so much of everything we talk about on this show, on any program, is subjective. But I will subjectively claim with the utmost confidence that this Warriors team is a real contender and that you're doing a disservice to players like Stephen Curry and Draymond Green to not make a move that could win you a championship. And again, maybe the most important part about all this, Drew, is that you don't have to give up important pieces to upgrade your roster. You don't. That's the beauty of the landscape this season. You have teams that are trying to tank. You have teams that would be happy to get a second-round pick just for you to take one of their assets away because all they're looking forward to is the future. So you don't have to trade important pieces to get back important pieces. That's the definition of a buyer's market. And we're going to talk about who some of these players are very soon. But Drew, yes, the expectation is championship. I don't know why you think that's so outlandish. And they are this close to actually making that a reality. They got to make some deals, by the way. Esteline King is asking in the chat, how would Jimmy Butler fit in the offense if we get him? He's one of the best players in the NBA. It would be one of the easiest fits imaginable. That's something I'm not worried about. Jimmy Butler is an elite player, a future Hall of Famer. If you can get him without giving up a major asset like Jonathan Kuminga, yes, you do sign him because the guy can be a literal difference maker to win a title. But again, I'm not sitting here advocating giving up important pieces for him. If you can get him for cheap, whole different story. Very important also to note that the Golden State Warriors themselves, there's no like hardcore report out there. There's nothing substantial reported indicating that the Golden State Warriors actually want him. The report more so is that Jimmy Butler, if he gets traded, wants to go to the Warriors. He also listed again the Houston Rockets and the Dallas Mavericks. Very important also to note that the Miami Heat reportedly want to trade him because Jimmy Butler has made it clear that he will not exercise the player option for next season. Jimmy Butler will not turn 36 until the beginning of next season. With that said, he wants one more big contract. And that's a huge reason why Miami is exploring trade options for him, because apparently the two sides are not on the same page in that regard. Jimmy Butler wants a big deal next year. Miami does not want to give him a big deal next year. So Miami wants to get something back if they're facing the prospect of losing him. And again, with all that said, I'm not going to sit here and endorse giving up important assets for him. But if you can get him on the cheap, please trust me when I say this, that would be a massive upgrade for this Warriors team. Jimmy Butler is a great player. And if you don't have to give up much for him, it would be awesome. And then Sean McCray in the chat saying that Miami ain't giving up Jimmy Butler without Kuminga, then I guess we ain't got a deal, because the Warriors, I trust the Warriors are smart enough to know that would be a foolish trade, especially given what we're seeing now with Kuminga, especially when we're not just seeing what we're the productivity from Jonathan Kuminga. When you give him extensive minutes, again, great things happen when Jonathan Kuminga plays. The Warriors are smart enough to know that you don't give that up for a possible 6-month rental, 3-month rental, whatever it is. Never mind the fact that Jimmy Butler turns 36. And yes, his best days are possibly behind him. I have faith in the Warriors front office that they would not be stupid enough to give up a trade like that. Now, if you're talking about trading Andrew Wiggins to get Jimmy Butler, we can agree to disagree whether or not Jimmy Butler is an upgrade over Andrew Wiggins. I will emphatically say yes. That is a massive upgrade at the small forward position if you swap out Wiggins for Jimmy Butler. But we'll get into that in just a moment. The point is, again, Jake Capini in the chat writing that if the Warriors can just get Cam Johnson, that makes him a contender. The beautiful thing is they can't. They can't. Cam Johnson, by the way, if the Warriors acquired him, would essentially be their small ball 5, which probably would not happen on any other team. But with this Warrior squad, you would have your front court of Draymond, Cam, and Kuminga alongside Wiggins and Curry. Point is, that lineup, if the Warriors have that lineup, they're as good as any team in the NBA, in this guy's humble opinion. Stephen Curry, Wiggins, Kuminga, Dre, Cam Johnson. If that's your closing 5, you're as good as anyone. Plain and simple. The Warriors have already proven they can keep up with the best teams in the NBA. Those wins in Boston, in OKC, those were not flukes, folks. Please don't believe that. And do not lose faith, despite the fact that they're getting up there in years. Do not lose faith in Stephen Curry and Draymond Green. They are still 2 of the best players in the NBA. They're still individuals with 4 championships worth of experience under their belt. And for the same reason that inexplicably people wrote them off in 2021, 2022. I was one of the only ones, myself and Stephen A. Smith, who from August of that previous offseason were telling folks, why are you writing off Stephen Curry and Draymond Green? These guys have proven they can win 1, 2, 3 titles, now 4 titles. Why would you write that off? Because they're older? They're not old as dirt. Their game has not slipped to the point where they cannot win another championship together. You just got to surround those dudes with talent. The NBA landscape, the way it looks right now, is primed for the Warriors to make a run. There's only a handful of teams that could pose an obstacle to a 5th championship for Stephen Curry. Whereas in other years, like the Nuggets 2 years ago, the Warriors would have had no shot against that. The Nuggets this year, you can overcome that. They don't have the depth if the Warriors make a move. I mean, the Warriors frustratingly lost in Denver the other day, even though they were shorthanded. But they were this close for a very good reason, because they're missing just one damn piece. I would love Cam Johnson on this team, and you don't have to give up diddly squat. We're going to bust out the trade machine in just a moment to get into the details of how we get some of these players. Now, first and foremost, if we're talking about Jimmy Butler, right? How do you get him? For today's show, we're going to be using the ESPN trade machine. There's 3 out there that I'm familiar with. There's ESPN's, there's Fanspo, and then my buddy Larry Kruger, who I was talking on the phone with today. We're going to be doing a post-game show together tomorrow following the Warriors and the Rockets NBA Cup action. So stay tuned for that. But we were just, discussing the news from Shams today, and we were talking about, what do you use for your trade machine? And so the 3 that and I know there might be other ones out there, but the 3 I'm familiar with: ESPN's, Fanspo, and then I think Real GM is the 3rd one that we've used. I think Spot Track also has a trade machine. However, because this is a program, because aesthetics are important, I was testing some of these trade machines out for the show, for at least the YouTube side of things. If you're listening on the podcast, I promise to articulate each of these in detail. And ESPN's aesthetically presents the best visuals for this. Anyway, so let's go into the trade machine, and let's explore what this Warriors team can do. because they can do a lot right now. I can't emphasize enough how important the Cooper Flag aspect is. Cooper Flag and the rest of the prospects that represent next year's NBA draft, they are the single biggest reason why the Warriors might just pull a 5th title this year off. Because again, if the draft was not this top heavy, you would not have teams tanking to get these lucrative assets. But because they exist, you have teams willing to give up a lot of great pieces that could be the difference, that could tip the scale in the favor of the Golden State Warriors. So why don't we get into this trade machine and start talking trades? What I want to do first and foremost is present a trade, and I've said this before. I apologize for the redundancy, but in case you've missed other shows, or if you don't mind seeing a trade that I've said before happen again, the trade first and foremost I want to propose and cover has nothing to do with Brooklyn or Miami, and has everything to do with the Chicago Bulls. Give me that sausage. Give me them Bulls. Da Bulls. So I want to, and I say this because I believe with the utmost conviction that if the Golden State Warriors acquire Nikola Vucevic, they're winning a championship. Especially given you don't have to give up anybody of significance. DeAnthony Melton's expiring deal, almost any other season, would not carry much weight. He's out for the year. He's injured. So whoever you trade him to is getting literally nothing except for an expiring contract. But because there is a top-heavy draft out there, and because the Bulls know damn well their team is currently constructed is not doing anything, they're willing to give up pieces if you just give them something back, provided the contracts you give back are expiring. And that's where Melton's contract brings so much value. And side note, one of the best parts about this, the Warriors can still get DeAnthony Melton back next year. And what was originally feared to be a contract number of maybe $15+ million a season to re-sign Melton after the year, because of the injury, his value has come down. So the Warriors can not only bring him back after the season despite trading him, but they could get him at an even more affordable rate. So for those of you out there who loved the DeAnthony Melton experience and the experiment, which lasted just a few short games, it was beautiful when he played. Keep those dreams alive for next season. The fact that the Warriors can give him up and get him back next year, along with assets this season, is incredible. He has turned into an asset just by being injured because simply of an expiring contract. So you're going to send DeAnthony Melton to any one of these teams. And again, this is why Jimmy Butler may not be the best idea, because Miami might want too much for him. The Chicago Bulls will not want too much for Nikola Vucevic. And if you want him, you trade DeAnthony Melton, and you can take your pick. You can either give up a GP2, and again, that's who I would give up personally. Nothing personal in this. I love GP2 on a personal level, but as a player, again, I'm also hearing, side note, that, and I'm reading some reports and talking to some people behind the scenes, that a significant reason for GP2's minutes this year are because of Stephen Curry and how comfortable he feels with GP2 out there. And if that is the reasoning, I can stomach that. All right. I mean, Steph and his wants and needs are vitally important. So if it's his personal preference, and if GP2 is on his wish list, I acquiesce, and I'm fine with that. With that said, GP2 is one of the most lucrative trade assets on this team because it's an expiring contract, because the Warriors are fine without him. Yeah, I guess those are the two reasons. So in a trade like this, DeAnthony Melton, GP2, you want to throw in a second-round draft pick. Maybe the Bulls, if they start playing hardball, they're like, we're not going to just give you Vucevic for 1 second-round pick. Fine, take a second-round pick. And if they say no at that point, give them the finger, hang up the phone. They'll call you back soon, because the alternative for the Chicago Bulls is nothing. You keep Vucevic for the season, and then he's a year older next year. I think Vucevic is on the first of a 2-year contract for $40 million. I actually need to, the trade machine should tell us that, right? Vucevic, 2 years. Okay, so he will be on the books next season for $20 million. That's another reason why the Bulls will be happy to give him up. So this is your trade right here. If you try this trade, it's easily successful. And look, if you really value Gary Payne II and you don't want to lose him, you can throw other pieces in here. Lindy Waters III. All right, let's throw him in the bucket. So we still got to throw a couple more pieces. Podziemski, I think, is too much for Vucevic. Kevon Looney, it depends on preference. We could also throw in, I don't know if you could do Guy Santos, Trace Jackson Davis. I don't think that would be enough. If we tried that trade, it would say fail. So you can't do those little things. So if you want Vucevic, it's going to have to be Melton and either GP2 or Kevon Looney. Now, Kevon Looney, keep in mind, also has an expiring contract. So if your preference is to keep GP2, you can trade Kevon Looney and make that deal work. The point is that deal is there. It's available. The Warriors could instantly elevate their status as a contending team by having Nikola Vucevic as your starting center. So that is my dream. There's a second dream trade out there, and this one's a little more funky. And a lot of people are going to look at me and look at this trade and ask, what are you thinking? Like, what are you doing? My response to that is, I'm building a roster that will win a championship. Not conventionally, not as conventionally as some of these other deals, but they would win a championship if they made this trade as well. And hear me out for a second as I propose this. The other team is the Toronto Raptors. We're going to throw DeAnthony Melton's expiring in there. Who are the players on the Raptors that I look at and think to myself, God damn, that would be beautiful? Bruce Brown, who everywhere he goes wins, unless they're an absolute crap team like the Toronto Raptors. And then the other piece is Davion Mitchell. And the reason why I want these two is because you're solving your shooting guard position issue. You're solving your backup point guard issue. Davion Mitchell, to me, is perfectly fine replacing Brandon Podziemski. You're getting better defensively in that trade. But the Bruce Brown piece of this, to me, is the key reason. Now, who do you give up to get Bruce Brown and Davion Mitchell? And again, I know a lot of you are thinking to yourself, who, what, why? This is where I'm interjecting my opinion. This is just me telling you, I believe firmly that if this deal is made, the Warriors are difference makers. They're making a run at this. I know they're not getting bigger per se, but Bruce Brown is a solid piece as a guard. Davion Mitchell is a fantastic backup point guard who can play defense, who can be that ball handler that makes Steve Kerr comfortable. Not the greatest three-point shooter, but neither is Brandon Podziemski, and the defense is far better than Podziemski. So who do you get back for? So who do you have to give up to in a trade like that? Well, let's say we add GP2 because his defense can just be subbed out for Davion Mitchell. They're practically equals in that sense. This trade does not work yet. Okay, so we got to add one more piece because right now we're about $8 million apart. So for the third piece, let's say we throw in, I don't want to throw in Kevon Looney. I don't know if maybe Moses Moody's too much. Who would I throw in for a third piece here? I'm certainly not giving up Buddy Hield. I'm not giving up Andrew Wiggins. I guess Moses Moody, would that be enough to make this trade happen? Still fails. So I guess we'd have to also add Lindy Waters or Guy Santos. Let's give those two pieces up. There we go. Successful. So if you traded GP2, Moody, Waters, Santos, you'd get Bruce Brown and Davion Mitchell. I know it's not going to excite anyone out there. I'm telling you this with the utmost conviction. You make this trade, your team is going all the way. Bruce Brown is a damn good player. And again, you don't have to agree with me. That's okay. We'll get back on track in terms of trades that make sense to you. But I think that would be an awesome trade. Coast to Coast, who, side note, yesterday dropped $100. I still cannot believe you did that. Thank you so much. Writing, Since when did Steve and Steph and Dre make the right decision when it comes to what everyone can see, even a caveman will approve? Won't be so surprised if Steve asks for another midget. I think, isn't that like a derogatory term, though? I shouldn't have said that out loud. I apologize. I think they prefer little people, and that's why I like rolling with hobbits myself. Funny movie reference that makes sense, that where everyone can understand what I'm talking about. With that said, I'll repeat what a story I've told before, Coast, just to maybe make you feel a little better. Steph and Draymond do not subscribe to the small ball, a love affair that Steve Kerr has. Meaning, if you asked them, would you like to have a big on your team? They would give you 2 big fat thumbs up. Do not. What I'm trying to say is, don't lump in Steph and Dre in terms of their opinions on personnel with Steve Kerr's. 2 very different sides in that regard. But I also hear what you're saying with Kerr in terms of what he wants. So, okay, forget about the Raptors. By the way, Dying 1234 brings up, what about Santi Aldama or Jay Huff in Memphis? And this is, again, what you have to do in a market like this is target teams who are mailing it in. The Memphis Grizzlies are a contender. If the Grizzlies are going to make a trade, they're going to want great pieces back. They're not going to give you Santi Aldama, especially not Jay Huff, who's a prospect, and they're not going to give those 2 up for nothing. You're going to have to trade very serious assets, and we're talking about trying to keep this team mostly together and improving what they have in the process. So, to summarize, I wouldn't mind those 2, but they're going to cost a lot, so we won't even explore that today. And I agree with Chef A 1,000% that the Warriors have to keep Kuminga. He's part of the future, and this is another reason why Coast to Coast I bring up Dre and Steph. Like, they view Kuminga as the future of this team. Kuminga is getting minutes because of Draymond Green and Stephen Curry, who endorse him. Whereas Steve Kerr, I have no idea how he feels about Kuminga in the big picture. So anyways, moving back to this trade, and Andre FRBK saying, I haven't seen you in a while, by the way. Great to have you back in the chat. It's been a long time. I don't know where you've been. I hope you're doing okay. I used to see you all the time in the old show, saying we need 14 players on the roster. That's where your 2-way players step in. Actually, Kevin Dana giving some enlightenment. He's the play-by-play voice of the Santa Cruz Warriors, coming out and saying the only thing that's holding Reese Beekman back from being an NBA player at this point is his 3-point shooting. I can live with that. Bring him in for the ball handling. Bring him in for the defense. Just don't let him shoot threes, and he'll give you a solid 5 to 10 minutes. Quentin Post, Kevin Dana also said the biggest concern for him is just the lack of experience. He's a floor spacing big. So if you make these trades, you can elevate those players to fill out your roster. Jay Talks is saying the Raptors hang up the phone and spit on it. They're another rebuilding team. Do not forget that. Bruce Brown is gone after this year. We're talking about replacing Bruce Brown with assets that the Raptors can use in the future. That's why I bring up the Raptors. They could give 2 shits about Bruce Brown. The Davion Mitchell piece of it, that's where hopefully Moses Moody would entice you a little bit. With that said, though, that's why the Raptors, I don't think, would hang up on a trade like that. Jay Talks mentioning Kerr would do anything to have Anthony Lamb back. Larry Silvernail bringing up Jakob Poeltl. When you talk about bigs that will just simply not be a fit for the Golden State Warriors, Jakob Poeltl would absolutely be one of those. Jakob Poeltl, I think, also has on his contract has 3 years remaining at $60 million. So your salary cap is also hamstrung. Bringing Jakob Poeltl back. I'm trying to implement reality here with all these trades, pragmatism, if you will. Meaning, even if a player sounds amazing, like Kelly Olynyk might actually be a great fit for the Warriors. His name's been associated a lot. But I'm also trying to apply, like, would Steve Kerr actually sign off on this, right? I don't know if Steve Kerr signs off on those guys. We all know how he feels about bigs. And that's another huge reason why I look at Bruce Brown and Davion Mitchell as being realistic pieces, because we know what Steve Kerr likes. Now, going back to now let's move on from the Raptors, though, because I want to focus on some of the trades that were in the news today. So what let's shift to the Brooklyn Nets, a team that absolutely wants to tank, a team that is doing way better than they themselves imagined or realized. They've got a great coach. They've got a team that's far deeper than they themselves expected. They've got assets that the Warriors also want. Now, the three names that Shams Charania dropped in his story as the names that the Warriors actually listed in terms of who they want, Dorian Finney-Smith, Dennis Schroder, and Cam Johnson. Of those three players, Cam Johnson has 3 years remaining on his contract. He's getting paid $22.5 million this year. Dorian Finney-Smith has 2 years remaining, including this season. And he's scheduled to make this year $15 million, or more specifically, $14.924 million. Dennis Schroder is on a 1-year deal. He's making $13 million. So keep that in mind in all these trade discussions. And those contracts and those numbers are one of many reasons, especially Cam Johnson's, in terms of why the Brooklyn Nets would be willing to make a deal where they give a lot of assets up for practically nothing. Excuse me. So if we're talking Warriors and Nets, DeAnthony Melton is in the mix again. All right. Let me see if I can make my screen a little better so folks can see it a little better too. Okay. So DeAnthony Melton, it goes without saying. By himself, he is not enough to get any of those other assets. So let's say we add GP2 to the mix. Again, GP2 is an asset in terms of an expiring deal and in terms of the Warriors being able to live easily without him. Side note, you can also re-sign him next year if you really love him and want him back. So if you're trading Melton and GP2, another interesting, maybe it's interesting, but another piece of information for you folks, just in case you're curious, draft picks do not represent any value monetary-wise in any trades. So when I'm saying, for example, Melton, GP2, and a pair of second-round picks, those pair of second-round picks represent $0 in trade talks. Like this NBA doesn't count a draft pick monetarily. So with that said, the Warriors, if it was just Melton and GP2, sending out $21 million and change, let's round up and say 22. Those two alone would not be able to get Cam Johnson because the Warriors, because of their hard cap and their salary cap situation, cannot bring back more money than they're sending out. So if you're going to get Cam Johnson, you would have to include a third piece, but you're really close, right? I mean, you're sending out 21.9 million. You're getting back 22.5. So all you'd have to do in a trade like this to give up a third piece is a Guy Santos, a Lindy Waters. It would be that simple to make this go. So let's say for the sake of argument, we throw in Guy Santos because he never plays. The Warriors are, they're trying to win a championship. You could trade DeAnthony Melton, Gary Payton II, and Guy Santos and get Cam Johnson. Now, obviously, those three by themselves would not be enough because Brooklyn would want something else to entice, and that is where you can go a few directions. You could either keep the trade just to this and throw in, 1 or 2 second-round picks. If Brooklyn insists on a first-rounder, that's up to Mike Dunleavy Jr. and Lacob clearly, but I would hesitantly throw that in if I had to, just because Cam Johnson would make such a huge positive difference for this team. Gives you length, gives you size, spaces the floor, high basketball IQ. Steve Kerr is familiar with him from the FIBA World Cup last year, even though he kind of fell out of the rotation by the end. But again, the Warriors inquired about him, so that tells me that maybe that experience did not sour Kerr enough to bring him back on the roster. With that said, that's how you get Cam Johnson. Now, if you want to make it bigger and you want to start adding other players to the mix, let's say you want also Dorian Finney-Smith, or let's say you want Dennis Schroder because he's a ball handler. Side note, me personally, Dennis Schroder does not excite me, but we all know Steve Kerr loves his ball handlers. He is playing great basketball this season. So let's say we want a 2 two players back from the Nets. Let's say the Warriors want Cam Johnson and Dennis Schroder. Okay, so now you're bringing back $35.5 million in salary, and so you're going to have to start including other pieces to this trade. So if you want Cam and Schroder, now you're going to have to start exploring perhaps Kevon Looney, okay, because he makes $8 million this season. His contract is expiring, although I don't think that would be enough. So yeah, the trade that would not be enough to bring it in. So if you want Cam and Schroder, now you're going to have to throw in Melton, GP2, Kevon Looney, Guy Santos. And then again, they're trying to win a championship, so you don't want to pick apart your roster too much. But let's say, for the sake of argument, Brandon Podziemski, because you are getting Dennis Schroder back. So ball handling at that point should be okay. That trade is successful. That does work. So if you want Cam Johnson and Dennis Schroder, you can get those two by throwing in Melton, GP2, Kevon Looney, Brandon Podziemski, and Guy Santos. And with Podziemski thrown in, maybe you don't have to include draft picks at that point. Maybe that will satisfy Brooklyn enough to give those assets up. Now, Dorian Finney-Smith, if you want to include him, now you got to start giving up a lot. I would, side note, love Dorian Finney-Smith on the Warriors. I think that would be an excellent fit. But those three combined account for $50 million. So you'd have to throw another big contract. That's where Wiggins would likely have to be included at that point in order to make it work. And I don't know if you're willing to do that. But again, you could do some mixing and matching with this. This is primarily an exercise to paint a picture for how easy or difficult, depending on how you look at it, it is to make some of these players or to trade for some of these players. Some comments in the chat. I just want to see how people are thinking about all this. Eddie757 writing, I would not mind seeing what it would take to get Jonas Valanciunas from the Washington Wizards. I wholeheartedly agree. We'll explore that in just a minute, because Washington is another team who would give up practically anything. They're the worst team in the NBA. If you're dreaming about a Jordan Poole reunion, the downside to that is he makes a ton of money. We'll explore that in just a minute. Moving along, Pinoy Reformat saying that you don't think Cam Johnson's a good defender. Eddie757 adding they don't think Cam Johnson is that athletic either. Keep in mind with any criticisms of defense that the Warriors do play a team-oriented style of defense. So anybody's weaknesses will be minimalized to a certain degree, playing for a team that, especially with Stackhouse in there now, just emphasizing defense on a string. You rarely see them calling for the zone D, because my guess for that is, and I'd love for a reporter to ask Steve Kerr one of these days why the Warriors have abandoned the zone scheme. My guess is that Stackhouse wants to keep it man so that they're hustling out there. A zone defense can bring in some complacency defensively, because you're comfortable knowing you cover a region and not an individual. You don't have to run around as much. Little less energy expended with the zone, but it also can take focus away. So regardless, I don't panic too much on the defensive questions. Dennis Schroder concerns me defensively far more than any of these other guys, even though I know very well he's handsy and he's a good defender for other guards, but the dude's like still 6'1", 6'2", which does matter. Now, Alan Wiley bringing up 3-team trades. I'm not going to explore that. It gets very complicated with 3-team trades. It's a possibility, but you're bringing up a 3-team trade between Washington, Brooklyn, and Miami to bring Butler and Cam Johnson back. Those get really complicated. I will not touch on that, because then we'll be here for like 3 hours. Yadamin brings up, what do you think of a Podziemski, Trace Jackson Davis, and DeAnthony Melton's expiring for Josh Giddey and Vucevic? I'm not a big Giddey fan, but I'll say this. The person who is a huge Josh Giddey fan is Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr, back in the 2021 draft, wanted Josh Giddey, and the Warriors would have drafted Josh Giddey with the number 7 pick if OKC had not taken him a pick earlier. In hindsight, I am insanely relieved to this day that did not happen. To me, Kuminga's ceiling is exponentially higher than Josh Giddey's. I don't like Josh Giddey's inconsistent shot. I don't like his defense. I'm just not a big Giddey guy. But you're adding Vucevic in there as well. And if it's Giddey over Podziemski, yeah, maybe you're enticing me a little bit. I wouldn't rule it out, and I don't think it's impossible. Don't be surprised if a trade like that happens, because Steve Kerr is fond of Josh Giddey. Let's see if there's anything else in the chat real fast. Julian Leka saying, if you want Jimmy Butler and Cam Johnson, you don't have anyone left on your roster. It's a lot of money you got to give up to get back. So I mean, and we'll bring up the Miami Heat next. Andrew Wiggins would have to be a part of that trade to make the salaries work. So, and as weird as it may sound, hearing it from my voice, I like how Wiggins is doing this year, man. He has surprised the ever-living S out of me. I had given up on him entirely. 2 years of sub-average play will do that. I understand he had the family issues. We still don't know for sure what really happened. I had, regardless, I'm happy with Wiggins now. He's playing fantastic basketball. I would give him up for Jimmy Butler, but I also am very happy with him being on the team now. I just wish Kerr would play him at the 2, which is where he belongs. But that's just me. Eddie757 adding, how about a package featuring Podziemski and picks to Utah for Kessler and Sexton? I've said this before. I'll say it again. The New York Knicks once upon a time inquired about Walker Kessler, and Danny Ainge's response to that was, I want 2 first-round picks. Keep in mind, Walker Kessler was a late first-round pick, but in Danny Ainge's mind, Walker Kessler is worthy of 2 first-round picks. He's not. If I'm the Warriors, I don't give up 2 first-round picks for Walker Kessler, and that's before you start mentioning Colin Sexton. Danny Ainge has made it very difficult to entertain the Utah Jazz with a trade. Jay Capinia adding, what if it's just Dorian Finney-Smith and Cam Johnson without Dennis Schroder? We kind of covered that already. Dorian Finney-Smith's contract is very similar to Dennis Schroder, so you just sub one out for the other. And there you go. Julian Leka also adding that Zaire Williams, is nice and a young, promising player from Brooklyn. Wholeheartedly agree. He might actually be an asset Brooklyn will not give up, given how young he is and how cheap he is. So I don't know if he would actually be an option. All right, moving on. Let's talk about let's go back to the trade machine and talk about the Miami Heat, because Jimmy Butler has said that if he's going to get traded, he has 3 teams in mind. One of those teams is the Houston Rockets. I believe Jimmy Butler, if I'm not mistaken, he's either from Houston or Dallas. He's from one of those 2 areas. But so he mentioned the Houston Rockets, he mentioned the Dallas Mavericks, and then the third team are the Golden State Warriors. So, and we've heard his name connected to the Warriors loosely over the summer, just randomly. Every couple months, I feel like his name comes up. There is nothing substantial out there indicating that the Warriors really want Jimmy Butler. But with that said, Jimmy Butler has said he wouldn't mind going to the Warriors. So how would that trade look? Jimmy Butler has a player option for next season that he has already said he doesn't plan on exercising. And meaning that his contract is unofficially expiring because Jimmy Butler wants to try out free agency next summer. This season, he's making $48.798 million. That is a grip of cash. So to get him back, it's going to get tricky. DeAnthony Melton's expiring, even though you would include that to a team like the Miami Heat, it's not as lucrative and attractive as it is to these tanking teams. But with that said, it's a high number. You want to make this trade work. So you're likely going to also have to include Andrew Wiggins in this deal. And then you're also going to have to likely include younger pieces to entice the Miami Heat. Again, I'm not throwing Kuminga in this because I don't want to throw Kuminga in this. I don't want Kuminga traded to the Miami Heat for Jimmy Butler. I think that is a grossly one-sided trade. I don't support that in any sense. I think that would be dumb. I'm not a big fan of throwing Moses Moody in there, but you're going to have to entice Miami somehow. So we'll throw Moody in there just to make the numbers work. So right now, the Warriors still don't have enough money for Jimmy Butler, even with Wiggins, Melton, and Moses Moody. So now let's say we throw in Brandon Podziemski. which might be a tough sell for Steve Kerr. And maybe Dunleavy and Lacob as well. I don't know as much how they feel, but if you threw that package together, still failed. So now you'd have to include a fifth option. GP2. If you included his deal in there, and then let's say if we include GP2, maybe we take out Moody or Pajemski. God, see, man, I'm just looking at these numbers. It's not easy. It is not easy for the Warriors to get Jimmy Butler. Oh, and see, in this case, the Heat are making life difficult. So, guys, I guess if we took out Moses Moody, with this trade still fails. Oh my gosh, you would have to make this. You would have to make the amounts almost identical. Jesus. Okay, so so far everything's being rejected because both the Warriors and the Miami Heat are over the cap. I think they're both hard capped as well. So you'd have to make this match like almost identically. It looks like. So how do you make this trade work? Let's say try Kevon Looney. Still failed because I have to cut $1.4 million from the Warriors. Jesus. So the Warriors would have to send back to make this trade work approximately $45.9 million. Let's see if I can make this work. I'm just trying to get a green light to acquire Jimmy Butler. I don't even know if it's realistically possible. All right, let's take Looney out. Let's try Moody and Pajemski. I'm just experimenting now just to see if we can get a green. This is how difficult it is to get Jimmy Butler. Maybe this trade will not work. Maybe this is an impossibility. Maybe that is where a third team has to come in. But every attempt I've made, see, like for example, a trade proposal involving Wiggins, Melton, Moody, and Brandon Pajemski is rejected because the Golden State Warriors have to cut $160,000 from the incoming trade to make this work. Let me see if I could just throw in like Lindy Waters. I at this point, I'm just curious if there's any, or Guy Santos. Let's try Guy Santos and see if this makes it work. Still failed because I don't think you can make this trade happen. Is there anyone in the chat that has a better idea? Bruce Morrow saying it will never happen. Yeah. I don't see anyone in the chat saying, give me a suggestion for making that work. I don't know how you get Jimmy Butler. I really don't. I mean, like you would have to match the salaries, I think, perfectly to make this a realistic trade. And I don't know if the numbers are there. Let me see if I can throw in like Lindy Waters, and then if I take out Pajemski, let's see if that works. Trade fails because I have to cut $334,000 from the Heat's incoming trade value. And then if we take, I don't know how you make this work. I don't know. I don't know. All right. So there you go. I don't know how you make Jimmy Butler work. Ash is saying add another player on Miami side. Yeah, I guess we can try that real fast. Who else on Miami would the Warriors want that the Heat would be willing to give up? How about this guy, P. Larson? I have no idea who that guy even is, but let's just throw P. Larson in there. Trade has failed. So now I got to cut Lindy Waters from the trade. So let's try cutting Lindy Waters, and the trade still fails because I don't know how they do this. I don't know how they do this. Everything I've tried, fails. Chardol is asking, why don't you try the Lakers to see if LeBron can get here? Because some people are talking about LeBron. I believe there was a report today that I don't know if it was Kendrick Perkins or someone with ESPN was reporting that Rich Paul would not this time advise against a trade to the Warriors if the Warriors called. Let's try the Lakers though. Let's so again, point being, my experiment using the trade machine to acquire Jimmy Butler failed miserably. So I don't know how the Golden State Warriors would acquire Jimmy Butler because of the two teams' cap situation. If someone has an answer for that, enlighten me, please. Real fast, Chardal was asking about the LA Lakers because of the fact that the Lakers themselves are struggling. Oh, I can't even use the trade machine for LeBron because he has a no trade clause. All right, so at least the trade machine, maybe like one of the other websites like Fanspo or one of those would let me, but ESPN's will not let me make the trade. Julian Leka writes, there's one that I'm not going to like, which is Jimmy Butler. So you found one that works, but but it involves Jonathan Kuminga held to the no. Pass. Nope. Hell no. I'm not going to approve that. And Sporting News is a decent publication, but what I've learned in this day and age with the way the media game is going, just because one publication reports it does not mean it's true. I sometimes need second and third sources to agree with that. Tony G adding Jimmy Butler is a terrible idea. Well, it doesn't even work. I don't know how you even make that trade possible. Okay, so moving on. Let's go to the Washington Wizards, because some people have talked about Valanciunas as being a potential trade target for the Golden State Warriors. His name has been linked to the team. I personally would not hate it. For me personally to be happy about a trade like that, you'd have to give up practically nothing in return. Good news is the Washington Wizards are a tanking team. So if you offer nothing, they might say yes, especially when you consider the fact that Jonas Valanciunas is just in the first of a 3-year deal. Now he is I can't even include him because he's not eligible for. Well, no. Why is he not available? Here. Jonas Valanciunas. I can't include him in this trade machine until December 14th. What I will do is I'm going to try out Fanspo real fast just to see if they will indulge me in a trade like that. So let's move over to Fanspo. That has an annoying ad bar at the bottom. Oh, they're just minimized. Thank goodness. Okay, so let's try and let's see if Fanspo is any better using the trade machine and trying out the Golden State Warriors making a deal with the Washington Wizards. Let's see if Fanspo will allow me to include Jonas Valanciunas. Looks like they will. That's good. Okay, so let's see. So if the Warriors are trying to get Jonas Valanciunas, that goddamn ad bar there again, man. If you want to know, that's another reason why I was not cool with using Fanspo. They've got an ad bar and they will not let me. Oh no, I can't. Good. I stand corrected. Okay, I just blocked the ad bar. Okay, very good. Now, Jonas Valanciunas to the Warriors. He's making approximately $9.9 million this year. For some reason, I thought he was making a lot more, but there we go. So it wouldn't be that hard. So if we threw in DeAnthony Melton into that deal, would that be enough? Let's give that a try. Where is the try trade button? Let's hit that. Failed. Oh, because Melton cannot be traded until December 15th. Isn't it weird how every website has their own ridiculous glitches? Like on ESPN, I could not include Jonas Valanciunas because of the rule that recently signed free agents cannot be traded until December 15th. But DeAnthony Melton, who fits under the same rule, I could have traded using ESPN's trade machine. On Fanspo, I can trade Jonas Valanciunas, but I can't trade DeAnthony Melton for the exact same reason. God damn it. That is annoying. Oh, well. I think you can make it work in terms of a trade. Despite the fact that we have two trade machines that are just annoying as all hell, they have to come within 75%. I suppose if you want to find like a really cheap additional salary on the Wizards to make it work, like an Xavier Cooks. Point is, it's a very doable deal. I wouldn't hate it. I do think there are better options. I also wonder if Steve Kerr would sign off on a trade for Jonas Valanciunas, but I would not hate it. Chardal is also bringing up Jordan Poole, saying he'd love to see Jordan Poole come back to the Dubs, a damn near impossibility for this season at least. He still has a lot of money owed to him. Side note, I'd like to see him finish that contract first, and then let's talk about him coming back to the Warriors. He's making way too much money. Are there any other teams, any other requests to explore trades with? Because those are what I'm looking at. And the Nets and the Heat are who Shams Charania brought up. Marco Doby brings up Brook Lopez. The Milwaukee Bucks will not trade him. He also makes a ton of money. But let's have some fun, just for the sake of argument. What if we want to talk about trading Brook Lopez? But again, the Bucks would want some value back beyond just an expiring deal. But let's give it a try. I'll entertain you. Let's go. Let's go Bucks and Warriors for Brook Lopez. The Milwaukee Bucks, where are you on my screen? Right here. Brook Lopez has 1 year remaining. He's making $23 million. So if you threw in DeAnthony Melton's expiring deal, and then let's say GP2, because he's also expiring, and then let's say for the sake of argument, the Bucks are like, yeah, sure, why not? We'll take a second round pick on top of Melton, GP2, and Guy Santos. I don't want to trade both those guys. Hold on. So let's say if we add Guy Santos to the mix, it would work. You could trade Melton's expiring, GP2's expiring, Guy Santos. You'd have to include draft picks, and this is where I hesitate to pursue Brook Lopez. We don't even know if the Bucks would trade him because they're thin at the center position to begin with, but it is possible. And then Chardal and the Portland Trailblazers are a good one. Okay, we'll do two more to wrap up the show, right? Because we're already at an hour, and that's insane. I don't know how these shows fly by as fast as they do. There's also one starred comment. Oh, it's from Coast to Coast. Thank you again for the donation. So wrapping it up, Eddie5757 bringing up Marcus Smart. Larry Krueger has talked about him as a player that he would like to see on the Warriors. I'm not a big fan of Marcus Smart to the Warriors, not to mention, again, the Grizzlies. This is a buyer's market provided the other team is a tanking team. The Grizzlies are not a tanking team. So if you want to be a prudent GM in this current market, focus on teams that are tanking. The Portland Trailblazers are an excellent example of that. Was there one other team that we were talking about as well too before Portland? Oh, was it I already forgot. I'm sorry. Let me look at the chat real fast. It was Julius Randle of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Let's try that out first, and then we'll finish up with the Portland Trailblazers. So if we reset and focus on the Minnesota Timberwolves as the trade partner, because Julius Randle is on an expiring deal, so you might be able to get him for a relatively decent rate. Although I don't think Minnesota is just going to give him up for nothing. And again, the problem with trading with a team like Minnesota, who's not tanking, is they don't see DeAnthony Melton's expiring as having any value, right? Especially when you consider that Julius Randle, although it says here he has 2 years remaining, my guess is it's a player option after this season, because I've heard endlessly that he's going to be a free agent after this season. So my guess is that reflects a player option. I thought those details were included if you hovered the mouse over them. No. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. Okay. But for the sake of argument, let's just give it a try. Julius Randle is pulling in $33 million for the year. I don't think Minnesota would have any interest in Andrew Wiggins. So if you're going to get him, you'd have to include like Kevon Looney, GP2. Immediately, I don't think this is a trade that's realistic. Just because Minnesota, if they're going to give up Julius Randle, and they consider themselves to be contenders as well, you're going to have to give back assets that mean something. So now, if you want to do a trade where Dante DiVincenzo is also included, and then you're including, let's say, like Brandon Pajemski, Moses Moody, that might actually work. Let's see. Hold on 1 second here. So if the Warriors want to get Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, Like Trace Jackson, you have to give up so much. No, I'm not even going there. It's just, it's not it's not happening. It is not happening. Give that dream up. That is not in reality. And then the last team, we're going to explore the Portland Trailblazers because they are tanking and they do have some very nice pieces on that team. The player that I look at when I see the Portland Trailblazers and it makes me drool is Robert Williams III. 2 years remaining on his deal. He makes $12 million and change this season. So if hypothetically, let's say you threw out DeAnthony Melton's trade and then you told Portland, how about 2 second rounders? Maybe a first round pick swap? If Portland eats that up, this trade's successful. So there you go. Eddie757 is warming up to the Giddey and Vooch deal. And again, that could work if you're swapping basically Podziemski for Josh Giddey. And then last but not least, Raymond M wants to see if we can trade for Zion Williamson. All right, we'll go to. We'll do 2 more and then we'll call it a wrap. Jeremy Grant of Portland. Let's see if that works, and then we'll explore Zion Williamson, a name that incredibly is out there. So let's see for Jeremy Grant, who has and this is the other part. This is I think the biggest reason why I don't think the Warriors do this, because Jeremy Grant still has 3 years remaining on his deal after this season. So let's say you want Jeremy Grant. You're not getting him and Robert Williams. So you're basically trading for a wing who's making a ton of money. Now, if you gave Portland GP2's expiring, Melton's expiring, and let's say Kevon Looney's expiring, and then you hope that Quentin Post can step in and start playing, yeah, you can make this trade. Jeremy Grant could be had literally. I don't think you'd have to include a draft pick for this deal. Side note, you could literally have Jeremy Grant for GP2 and Kevon Looney. Would I make that trade? Hell yes. Would Joe Lacob make that trade and bring in all that money? I don't know. But all right. And then last but not least, Armando Laura in the chat mentioning that the Warriors are going to pursue a Billy Bean style trade. Again, the market calls for it this year. Chef A adding Brooke Lopez. Give me my pen. I'm going to sign now. Nah, he would be a great fit on the Warriors, but I don't see how the Bucks give him up. All right, and then the last but not least trade. Let's go. Let's check out the New Orleans Pelicans and see if the Warriors can get Zion, who might just be an unrestricted free agent after this season, the way things are going with him in New Orleans. So let's add the Pelicans because I'm curious about Brandon Ingram as well. He might also be available for practically nothing. All right. So Zion Williamson will make $36.725 million this season. So the Golden State Warriors will have to throw some deals in there to make the salaries work. So let's say we have DeAnthony Melton's expiring contract, GP2's expiring contract, Kevon Looney's expiring contract. Would those 3 by themselves be enough? No, because those 3 don't make enough money together. Okay, so you'd have to also include, all right, let's include Moses Moody because the salaries work, and New Orleans probably would be enticed if you included Moses Moody. Trade still fails. Okay, let's include Guy Santos. Now with Guy Santos, the trade still, because the Pelicans are also in salary cap hell. So similar to Jimmy Butler, it might end up being a trade that because of the new CBA becomes nearly impossible. This has just cut. Yeah, but I can't just cut something from New Orleans to make this work. This is another trade that might be a near impossibility. Brandon Ingram makes practically the same amount of money as Zion Williamson. But again, because both teams use their mid-level exceptions, it complicates things. And again, this new CBA is a joke in terms of just all these rules and nuances that exist entirely because small market teams have no clue how to run their organizations and or they have cheap owners. So they nitpick, they create all these rules to make life harder for the big market teams. And for what? To get lower ratings. Jacob Pena adding Zion would be the dumbest move, and it would not be an easy move. You'd have to give up a lot for him. So I don't even think that's a possibility. Same with Brandon Ingram. Eddie757 saying some shady website brought up Anthony Simons of the Trailblazers, but he's one of their young assets. I mean, if Portland's giving up anyone, I don't know why they'd give him up unless they're literally giving up on him and don't think he's no longer a promising prospect. But if that's the case, then why would you want him in the first place? So there you go. That's what's out there. Again, I'm all in on Vucevic. To me, you trade for Vucevic, you're giving up nothing in the process. You become a championship contender. I predict a championship, strongly predicted if the Warriors make that trade. You can also trade with Brooklyn and realistically get 2 of those 3 players that Shams Charania reported that the Warriors are interested in: Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Dennis Schroder, and you don't have to give up much to get them. Point is, this is a buyer's market. It's time for the Warriors to take advantage of that. I'm excited to see what happens. Anything else? The trade deadline, Chef A is asking, I believe February 6th, maybe the 8th. I'll Google it real fast. I believe it is February 6th. The NBA trade deadline is officially, February 6th at 12 p.m. So they've got a lot of time. And truth is, the market itself will not even open until next week, December 15th, which I believe falls on a Sunday. So that is when you're gonna really start hearing a lot of reports and rumors and all the fun stuff, most of which has no truth to it. That's all going to start next week. So we shall see. Thank you for joining the program. I hope this exercise was fun for each of you. We'll be back tomorrow night. Warriors, Rockets, NBA Cup quarterfinal play with the chance to go to Vegas for the semis and finals. Thank you to everyone for joining the program. But yeah, Diane 1, 2, 3, 4, Vucevic, bring them. I'm in. And truth is, I'll take Cam Johnson too. I just give me some size. Give me some individuals with some length, with some height, with some talent. Sign me up. Let's get Stephen Curry a 5th championship. I hope everyone has a great rest of the evening. We'll be back tomorrow night. Myself and Larry Krueger, Warriors, Rockets post game. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.